So hi everybody, today I want to talk about a kind of intermediate plasticity subject, which is how to model not aligned to the coordinate system. Now normally, if at all possible, when we model objects, we want them kind of centered at the origin and aligned in some way with the x, y, z axes. That makes it a lot easier to, for example, mirror objects, or if we have other objects in the scene, like, I don't know, this is like a laser gun or something, and we want to align it so that it's like a shoulder mounted whatever. Um, it's easiest if our objects are centered at the origin and aligned to the coordinate system in this way. But that is not always possible. So the subject of today's video is how to model off-axis. Now, you'll notice that when you run the move, rotate, and scale commands, coming back to move, the gizmos are normally aligned to the x, y, and z axes. Now, that's usually what you want, but sometimes you might want to, like, for example, move a body in the direction of the normal of a face. Well, the easiest one-off fast way to do that is to use pivots. So for example, by typing V, you can move the move gizmo. And here I'll just kind of click on the center of this face. And now you'll notice that the blue or local Z axis is aligned to the face's normal. And now we can use the gizmo or use the key bindings to move the object in a sort of local space, basically. Now, that's great, and that works for move, rotate, scale, and a few other commands. But sometimes you want to do many things with the same alignment. So for example, let's say that this is a sci-fi control panel, and we want to put like a bunch of buttons on this aligned to this face. Now, we can draw like a little box, let's say. I'm just gonna make something like this. I'm gonna make this a new body. And so when you draw on a face, it's already aligned to the face. But let's say we wanna move it, well, not along Y, not along Z. Let's say we wanna move it down this face, right? So none of these are aligned in the way that we want. Now we can definitely use pivot and set like a local Z to move it along the face, right? But another option, if we're gonna be doing this over and over and over, is to actually make the face our construction plane. And so we can do that by selecting a face and typing space. And that will align the camera to the face, and we get an indication here that we have a temporary construction plane. Now I'm just gonna orbit away so you have a sense of what's going on. You can see that our origin kind of has moved to the center-ish of the face and is aligned to the face in the sense that the z-axis of this kind of coordinate system is aligned to the face's normal. Now, why is that useful? Well, if we, for example, I'm going to duplicate this with Shift-D, you'll notice that the gizmo for move is aligned to the construction plane, not the world axis, right? You can see that Z is aligned to the face's normal. So as long as we have a construction plane set, gizmos like move, rotate, scale, also like the mirror gizmo, will all be aligned to the current construction plane. And so when you're modeling like on a surface like this, I'm gonna make a bunch of buttons with like array or something. It can be quite useful just to have a temporary construction plane, and when we're done, we can either click X to like return to the normal world coordinate system, or alternatively, when we have the construction plane active, we can click on this to save the construction plane, and that will save it for later. So for example, we're back to the normal global coordinate system, and if I click on this, it will set the construction plane there, and if I double click on it, it will align the camera to the construction plane as well. Okay, so we saw that we can select a face and type space, And now that face is a construction plane. So for example, if I draw this circle, it's going to be coplanar with the face that I had selected and made the construction plane. But there are other ways of making a construction plane as well. So for example, if I select two faces, in this case, two parallel faces, and I make them the construction plane. Now I'm going to use shift space rather than space, which will keep the camera static but set a new construction plane. So shift space. You can see that it actually created a construction plane midway between these two faces. So with one face selected, the construction plane goes on the face. With two parallel faces selected, the construction plane will be the midplane. When you have multiple faces selected that are not parallel, like in this case, you can see these two faces are not parallel. If you set the construction plane with shift space in this case, the construction plane will actually be the average normal of those two faces. Now that's not all. There's a couple other ways to set a construction plane. For example, if you have a curve and you have a vertex selected and you type shift space, it will make a construction plane at the vertex tangent to the curve. Now, we've seen selection-based construction planes with space and shift space. If you forget the key bindings, you can always click this button, plane from selection. There's another button near it which can set a construction plane to be aligned to the current camera position. If you click on that, for example, the construction plane will be aligned to the camera, and that can be really useful for making like screen space cuts, for example. I have a whole video on that. You can watch it if you're interested. Now, I just want to show at the end a kind of few other ways that you can use construction planes in plasticity. So let's say you have a curve. Now, normally when you draw on a curve, a local construction plane is created so that, like, for example, when I make a circle, the circle's normal is tangent to the curve at that point. But maybe you don't want that. Maybe I want to draw a circle at this point, but not like tangent to the curve. I want it to be like on the XY axis. If you go into an orthographic view, you will actually force the construction plane to be used. And in that case, for example, it will be on the XY axis. So there's a lot of cases where when you're in a 3D view, sort of things are very contextual. But if you move into an orthogonal view, like top and left and right and front and so forth, or you use one of these construction planes or custom construction planes by double-clicking, you force a construction plane to be used when it might not otherwise. And so that can sometimes be helpful. Now there are a couple other ways to use construction planes. Like for example, let's say you have a three-dimensional curve like this. One way of flattening it, in this case, would be to scale it along 0. But another way would be to project it onto the current construction plane, which is done with Alt-D. And that can be interesting because, for example, well, suppose you set plane from a camera. Actually, let me do something a little bit more interesting. Plane from a camera, and then project it. You can see that what we've just created, let me hide this guy, is like the object as viewed from that particular angle and projected onto the plane. Anyway, there's a lot of things like that where the construction plane can be used as part of commands, and I'm constantly refining things in ways to try and make it a bit more conceptually coherent. But hopefully this can give you guys like the basic tools you need to start modeling not aligned to the XYZ axes and start to use construction planes in interesting ways. And yeah, good luck, have fun.